After the humble funeral of Ray Halter, the longtime owner of Mustang Hollow Ranch, the entire town believed the final chapter of an era had quietly closed. But just hours later, when the lawyer read the will, everything turned upside down. A man long exiled from the ranch, a wild horse forgotten by time, and a secret buried for 3 decades were suddenly called back into the light. The ranch held its breath, and then, a dream everyone thought was dead came back to life. It was raining. Not the kind of rain that washes everything away, but a quiet, persistent drizzle, as if the skies over Sierra Flats were mourning something too heavy to put into words. The funeral of Warren Callahan was held on the same stretch of highland he had called home for over half a century. Neighbors from nearby ranches, a few local officials in dark suits, distant relatives flown in from all over, yet all stood back, leaving one man alone at the front, just inches from the coffin, a thin, motionless figure under a soaked black cowboy hat. Raymond Halter, or just Ray as everyone called him, 73 years old, 3 parts worn out, 7 parts unshakable. He didn't cry, but his eyes, shaded under that dripping brim, carried something heavier than tears. Memory. 44 years of building Mustang Hollow together, back when it was nothing but a weed-choked field and a collapsed barn. Ray held his hat tight against his chest, like he was shielding his weathered heart from the wind sweeping the plains. He didn't pray, didn't bow his head. He only leaned slightly toward the coffin and whispered, "I'll take care of the horses, the way we always did, Warren. Rest easy, you stubborn old man." The wind took the words, but someone far back caught the look in his eye. Maddie. She was 28, her hair pulled back, wearing a flannel shirt and mud-covered boots. Not related by blood, but Ray had taught her how to brush a horse's mane with steady hands, how to listen when a horse trembled even though the weather was calm. To her, Ray was the living soul of Mustang Hollow. After the service, the crowd trickled back to the main house, coffee, almond cake, and the same hollow condolences people always say. Ray didn't follow. He walked around back, along the weathered fence toward the main barn. The rain clung to his shoulders, reluctant to let go. Then came the sound of footsteps behind him. "Mr. Halter!" Ray turned. 3 people in black, rigid shoulders, eyes thin with disdain. Colton, Warren's eldest son, stood in the middle, tie-tight tailored blazer sharp. On one side, Harper, her once bright eyes dimmed with distance. On the other, Jesse, the youngest, with a thick mop of styled hair, spotless boots, and an air of entitlement. Ray nodded politely. "Colton, Harper, Jesse, something you need?" Colton stepped forward, wasting no time. "Ray, thank you for all the years you gave to my father. But times are changing. This ranch needs modernization. That starts by replacing outdated personnel." Jesse snorted. "To put it plainly, you're fired, old man." Harper looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Ray didn't flinch, he just raised an eyebrow. "Today's your father's funeral. Maybe this isn't the time." Colton cut in. "Exactly why we want to be clear. You'll vacate the south quarters by week's end. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." From the distance, Maddie came running, eyes wide. "What the hell are you talking about? Ray kept this ranch breathing for 40 years. Without him." "Miss," Colton said coldly, "spare us the sentiment. This is a family matter." Mercedes, the 70-year-old cook who'd been with the ranch since before Warren married, stepped onto the porch, dish towel in hand. "You boys should be ashamed. If your father could hear you now, he'd rise from that grave just to knock sense into all 3 of you." Colton glanced at her. "If our approach offends you, feel free to leave with Mr. Halter." The air froze. Ray raised his head, voice low like a stone dropped in a quiet canyon. "I understand, but I ask one thing. Let me say goodbye to the horses. One last time." Jesse smirked. "Horses aren't your friends, they're assets, and they belong to the Callahan family now." They turned and walked off, leaving the old man standing alone in the rain. Ray said nothing, looked at no one. He simply turned and walked toward the barn as he had every morning for the past 44 years. But today was different. No coffee waiting in the old grain room. No Warren shouting at a loose colt in the distance. The barn was quiet. The scent of hay still lingered. Ray moved down the corridor, stopping at each stall, gently pressing his hand to each forehead, each damp neck. When he reached the final stall, where Midnight, Warren's prized purebred Mustang, was kept, Ray stopped. Midnight stepped forward, tossing his head, eyes glistening as if he knew what was coming. Ray opened the gate and walked inside, sitting beside the great black horse. "This might be the last time, boy, but I'm not leaving you. Not because they threw me out, just because I'm old. I only wanted a word from Warren, but he's gone now." Midnight nudged Ray's hand with his muzzle, like he disagreed. Outside, the rain fell harder, but inside that stall, between an old man with calloused hands and a Mustang that carried the weight of an entire legacy, something still burned. A bit of pride, a bit of love, and a dream left unspoken. The rain stopped the next morning, leaving long streaks of mud along the dirt road leading into Mustang Hollow. The ranch still stood, silent and heavy, as if holding its breath after a long cry. The rows of old pinewood barns were quiet, no horses whinnying, and the small wooden house where Raymond Halter had lived for nearly half a century no longer cast its warm light through the window. Everything felt foreign now, even to the man whose roots ran as deep into this place as the cottonwoods behind the paddocks. Ray packed his belongings with hands calloused by time. An old brush he used on midnight. A dark leather bridle he stitched himself. A faded black and white photo of him and Warren on the day they started all this. He didn't cry. He never had, not even when his young wife died of fever in the winter of '81. But inside, something hollow opened up, like a part of his chest had been quietly carved away. A soft knock. Maddie stepped in, holding a mug of coffee, steam rising gently from the rim. "I followed your recipe. 3 scoops? No sugar." Ray accepted it with a nod. "Thanks. You didn't have to." "I did," she said, clutching the sleeves of her flannel. "They had no right to treat you that way." He gave her a tired smile, then went back to folding items into an old wooden trunk. Silence settled between them. Outside, Warren's children were already speaking with a pale man in a light gray suit, flipping through documents and pointing at architectural plans pinned to a display board. Colton led the conversation, gesturing to plots of land around the barn. Jesse lounged with his boots propped up like he was watching a show. Harper stood behind them, arms folded, eyes scanning the property like she was staring into an old memory that hadn't quite healed. From the office, Dixie, Mercedes' daughter, hurried out when she spotted Ray. She was 30, hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her voice was sharp when she spoke. "Ray, you need to come to the main house. Someone's asking for you. A lawyer named Elijah Browning says he represents Mr. Callahan." Ray paused. "Elijah? Thought he moved back to Santa Fe. Apparently just a leave, but he's back. And he brought a leather satchel. Looks serious. He insisted you be present for the reading of the will this afternoon." Ray set the coffee down, eyes still distant. "I don't think I'm part of anything anymore." Maddie cut in, voice firm. "They took your place. Don't let them bury the truth, too." Ray didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the stables. The scent of hay still lingered, and the sound of hooves still echoed faintly, like a memory refusing to die. That afternoon, the main room of the Mustang Hollow house filled with people. The air smelled of aged pine, worn leather, and black coffee. Old photographs hung along the walls. Warren and Ray grinning in grainy frames, a history of racing ribbons pinned beneath. No one looked at them. Colton stood near the fireplace, holding a glass of red wine, quietly speaking to a man in a gray business suit from a real estate firm. Jesse sat hunched in a corner, scrolling through his phone. Harper leaned against the window, staring out toward the yellowing grass of a drying summer field. Mercedes, neatly dressed, stood beside Dixie. They both turned when slow, deliberate footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ray entered. The suit he wore didn't quite fit, tight in the chest, sleeves a bit too long, but he looked dignified. It was the suit Warren had given him the day Mustang Hollow won its first national award. Mercedes nodded gently as he passed, her eyes offering a silent thank you. Maddie walked behind him, uninvited, but no one stopped her. She took a spot by the window, close to Harper. Elijah Browning stood, adjusted his glasses, and spoke clearly. "Thank you all for coming. Per the legally certified will of Mr. Warren Callahan, composed 6 months prior to his passing, I will now read the contents. And there is one person Mr. Callahan specifically required to be present, Mr. Raymond Halter." Colton cleared his throat. "If this is a family matter, he shouldn't be here." Elijah didn't blink. "He is mentioned by name. His presence is non-negotiable." Jesse scoffed. "What kind of game is this?" Elijah unbuckled a worn leather satchel, removed a red-stamped folder, and laid it on the table. He said calmly, "This is the final will and testament of Warren James Callahan. I ask that everyone remain calm and listen through to the end." Tension tightened the room like a bowstring. Even Colton stepped back slightly, jaw clenched. Ray sat quietly at the far end of the table, hands on his knees, palms trembling just enough to notice. Elijah began reading. "I, Warren James Callahan, being of sound mind and full capacity, make this will of my own free will. All personal financial accounts, bank holdings, and property not tied to Mustang Hollow shall be divided equally among my 3 children, Colton, Harper, and Jesse." A few glances. No surprises. Elijah paused, then continued. "However, all assets directly connected to Mustang Hollow Ranch, including land, facilities, barns, the Callahan Mustang bloodline, and all related training heritage, shall be divided as follows: 49% equally shared among my 3 children, and 51% granted to Mr. Raymond Halter, partner, friend, and the uncredited co-founder of Mustang Hollow." A glass hit the floor. Jesse's whiskey. Colton's jaw tightened. Harper turned sharply toward Ray, who hadn't moved, frozen in his seat. Elijah gently folded the will and added, "There is also a letter Mr. Callahan requested to be read aloud by Mr. Halter. If you're willing." Ray looked around the room. Eyes, silence, waiting. He reached out, took the yellowed wax-sealed letter, drew in a breath. If that's what he wanted. Ray's voice wavered at first, raspy and unsure, but then it steadied, solid, unshakable. "Ray, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And there are things I never said. Now's the time to say them." Ray still held the letter in his hand. His voice had steadied, but each word hung heavy in the air, like stones falling slowly into a quiet lake. The room was utterly silent. Even Jesse had put down his phone. No one could recall when. "You always said Mustang Hollow didn't need to carry the name of its builders, only that it should stand strong. But now that I'm gone, I can't let the truth stay buried any longer. Colton, Harper, Jesse, my children, I know some of you may be shocked, some may be angry, but please, hear me out." Ray paused, his eyes drifting across their faces. Colton's ice-cold stare. Harper, still as a statue, unreadable. Jesse, lips pressed tightly together, fists clenched. Mercedes stood nearby, gripping the hem of her dress. Maddie held her breath. Dixie had her hand over her mouth. Elijah gave a single nod. This was all real. "You never knew that Raymond Halter wasn't just a trainer. Not just my best friend. He was the one who helped build Mustang Hollow from nothing. With his own land, his own bleeding hands, and a loyalty that never wavered. Back in 1982, when the bank was going to take the ranch, Ray sold his family's property in Montana to keep Mustang Hollow alive. No one knew, because he didn't want them to. Just like no one knew, he kept hiding his burned hand after saving our horses in the fire that same year. I always thought I'd tell you kids one day, but I didn't. Maybe I was scared. Scared that the name Callahan would be diminished if people knew your father had to rely on a ranch hand. But the truth is, Ray was the soul of this ranch, and Mustang Hollow was never just mine. It was our dream." No one moved. The only sound was the faint whistle of wind slipping through the window panes. Every eye in the room was locked on one man, the old one they'd once called outdated. In 1985, the ranch caught fire. Ray risked his life, ran back into the blaze to lead each horse out one by one. His left hand was badly burned. Still can't fully close to this day. "I almost died trying to save Stormborn, our first true-blood Mustang." Ray lifted his left hand, 3 fingers bent unnaturally. A deep scar ran from wrist to palm. "It was Ray who carried me out of the fire." Jesse narrowed his eyes, lips trembling. Harper turned fully to look at Ray. Even Colton stood frozen, his face pale. "I never told you because I feared it would complicate things. But now that I'm gone, what matters is recognizing the right person at the right time." Ray folded the letter and placed it gently on the table. That's what he wrote. Nothing more, nothing less. Silence. Even the grandfather clock on the wall seemed to pause. Mercedes was the first to break it. She walked forward and laid a hand on Ray's shoulder. "I always knew there was more to your bond, but I never realized it ran this deep." Colton finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Why? Why did no one say anything all these years?" Ray answered slowly, his voice like carving into stone. "Because I never needed thanks. And Warren, he needed the ranch to survive. If putting my name out front would have shaken people's trust, I would rather stay in the back, so long as the ranch had horses, wind, and someone to keep dreaming. Harper stepped closer, meeting Ray's eyes. Did you ever feel forgotten? Ray shook his head. No, I felt proud. Elijah opened a second folder. Per Warren's instructions, I've brought all supporting documentation, 1982 wire transfers, a handwritten loan agreement signed by both parties, original stall designs drafted by Ray, and the 1985 medical reports confirming his injuries, all authenticated recently and ready to be submitted to the county court if challenged. Jesse couldn't hold it in any longer. He shot up, voice sharp. This is insane. A handwritten will, some old papers, and suddenly this guy owns half our ranch? I won't accept this. Elijah remained calm. You're entitled to contest. But under New Mexico law, a notarized will with corroborating evidence and witnesses stands as legally binding. Colton narrowed his eyes, voice dropping. We'll appeal. Dixie, who had stayed quiet, stepped forward holding an old leather-bound journal. I found this in your father's desk this morning. It's a ledger, handwritten from the early years. Right here. Loan from Ray, no interest, to be repaid once stable. You're welcome to see it. Colton froze. Harper took it, flipping through the pages, her eyes reddening. Mercedes turned to Jesse. Well, anything to say? Jesse didn't respond. He slammed his fist into the armrest and stormed out of the room, rage thick in the air. Harper watched him go, whispering, He's just scared. Colton stood still, but the arrogance in his eyes had dimmed. He looked at Ray, and for the first time since the funeral, his voice softened. I didn't know about any of it. Maybe Dad was right to keep it hidden. Ray nodded, no resentment in his face. He just wanted the ranch to stay standing. Being a father is hard. Maddie stepped beside Ray, her voice firm, and he did it because of you. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was full of quiet acknowledgement, a shared truth finally spoken. Elijah closed the folder and said, like sealing a long chapter, I'll file the formal paperwork next week. As of today, Mr. Halter is the official co-owner of Mustang Hollow. Ray rose. He didn't hold his head high. He didn't rush, but his steps were steady, that familiar limp, that honest gaze. And in that moment, everyone understood. Mustang Hollow had just gotten its soul back. Outside the window, the last rays of afternoon sun pierced through the pine trees, lighting up the damp ground below, with the scent of horses, hay, and a justice that had just awakened. The news of Warren Callahan's will spread faster than prairie wind. Within 3 days of the reading, Mustang Hollow was no longer just a quiet ranch tucked into Sierra Flats. Locals whispered about how old man Ray Halter had suddenly become the legal co-owner of a Mustang empire. The town newspaper ran a headline tinged with irony. The fired ranch hand now holds the soul of the hollow. But glory never walks alone. In the shadows, the first waves of resistance were already building. Colton Callahan didn't wait long to strike. Just 2 days after the will was read, he retained Donnelly and Morris, a law firm out of Santa Fe, to prepare an appeal. Warren's former office now served as a legal war room. Folders stacked high, zoning maps unrolled, financial projections scribbled over with red ink. One proposal even pitched selling off parts of the land to an industrial cattle operation out of Texas. If we consolidate our 49% and Ray refuses to comply with certain terms, we can bring him to court for non-cooperation, Colton muttered. Harper sat by the window, gaze distant. I'm not signing anything, she said flatly. Colton furrowed his brow. Harper, this is family property. Are you going to let that old man run the whole show? He's not running it, she said. He's preserving it. Colton exhaled hard, pouring himself a scotch. And where's Jesse? Dixie answered from the doorway. No one's seen him since morning. He drove the pickup south. Colton shook his head. If he stirs up trouble, I'm not cleaning it up. Across the ranch, Ray sat in the back room of the main barn, flipping through Warren's old breeding logs. Maddie brought him another mug of hot coffee, her other hand holding a clipboard with the horses' health charts. I counted 3 mares losing weight lately. Could be stress. They're not used to new handlers. Ray nodded silently. He knew the herd could sense tension better than most humans. A knock. Elijah stepped in, holding a large envelope and a stack of legal papers. I just came from the courthouse. Callahan's lawyers have officially filed for a stay on the will's execution, pending litigation. Ray raised a brow. On what grounds? They claim Warren was mentally impaired when the will was signed, based on a few mild sedatives he was prescribed last year. Ray's hands clenched slightly on the chair arms. And do we stand a chance? A good one, especially if we can prove he was of sound mind. And, Elijah placed the documents down. We now have the journal Dixie found. I've verified the handwriting. It's Warren's. That's strong evidence. Ray nodded. Thanks. But if they're taking this to war, we'll need more than proof. We'll need to outlast them. Things escalated when Ray was summoned to the sheriff's office. The charge? An anonymous tip accusing him of manipulating the former owner to seize assets. There was only one person reckless and petty enough for that. Jesse Callahan. At the station, Ray sat across from Lieutenant Vaughn, an old acquaintance who once kept horses himself. I don't believe you did anything wrong, Vaughn said, but protocol demands a report. Ray simply nodded. Do your job, Vaughn. I've got nothing to hide. When Ray stepped outside, Harper was waiting by an old Jeep. What are you doing here? He asked. I know Jesse filed the complaint, and I know my father wasn't insane. But my brother, he's playing a corporate game now. He's forgotten this place is built on memories. Ray studied her face for a moment. But you haven't. She smiled faintly. I remember wanting to be a vet. My father said Callahan girls didn't work in the dirt. Ray replied gently. He wasn't doubting you. He was afraid you'd get hurt. Meanwhile, Maddie, after many sleepless nights, decided to post Ray's story online. A heartfelt article with old photos of Ray and Warren and a short video of Ray brushing midnight in the rain. The post went viral. Cowboy groups, horse lovers, veterans forums across the West reposted it under the headline, One Man, One Herd, One Dream, Stolen. Within 2 days, over 20,000 shares. People from all walks of life wrote in, former ranch hands, local moms, retired trainers. They quoted Ray's favorite saying, horses don't talk, but if you listen long enough, they'll tell you everything. Colton paled when he saw the story. Harper looked at him and said simply, that's not a PR stunt. That's trust echoing back. The local court issued a preliminary ruling. There was insufficient cause to suspend the will. Meanwhile, Ray's legal team submitted one final piece of evidence, an audio recording of Warren speaking with Father Nolan, the local priest. In it, Warren confirmed his full intent to leave Mustang Hollow in Ray's hands. When the news came in, Jesse lost control. He kicked over a chair in the barn, startling one of the mares, nearly getting trampled. Mercedes, watching from the door, only shook her head. That boy never understood what this ranch truly meant. Colton closed his laptop and walked out to the yard, where Ray was fixing the old fence rail. I'm not apologizing, he said, but I get it now. You didn't steal anything. You're holding on to what my father wanted to pass down. Ray laid the hammer down and turned. I don't need an apology. I just need this place to stay what Warren believed in. That night, Ray sat on the porch with Maddie, Harper, Elijah, and Mercedes. Dixie brought cornbread, still warm. Harper leaned in and asked quietly, if Jesse keeps pushing, what will you do? Ray looked toward the far black hills, his and Warren's old riding route. When we were young, your father and I once led horses through a snowstorm. Every step was a fight, but we never turned back. This ranch is the same. If you want to protect its soul, there's only one way. Keep moving, no matter who walks away. Nights in Sierra Flats are usually so still you can hear the wind brushing against tin roofs or the faint wing beats of an owl cutting across the sky. But tonight, the wind carried something else, the scent of smoke. And a scream. The first scream wasn't human. It was a high, piercing whinny from midnight. The black Mustang Ray had raised like part of himself. The sound sliced through the silence like a blade, jolting the entire ranch awake. Maddie was the first to move. She didn't bother with boots, just her long flannel shirt and bare feet pounding against the porch. The sky above the barn was glowing red. Fire clawed its way upward, licking the air like it had burst from the soil itself. Flames danced along the rooftops, wrapping around beams and hay bales with terrifying grace. Ray! Fire! The barn is burning! Maddie screamed. Ray was already stepping off the porch when he saw it. His eyes locked on the glow, and he ran. 73 years old, joints stiff every morning, back hunched from decades of ranch work. But that night, he ran like his very heart had been thrown into the fire. Inside the barn, the Mustangs were in chaos. Eyes wide with panic, hooves crashing against stall doors, snorts and whinnies echoing off the smoke-stained walls. Maddie shoved open stalls one by one. Out! Get out! Come on, Midnight. Move! A burning beam fell, missing her shoulder by inches. Ray lunged in and pulled her down, shielding her with his coat. Their shadows danced on the walls, flickering like ghosts wrestling fate. Midnight stood firm. He hadn't bolted. He stood between them and the flames, eyes locked as if understanding what was at stake. Go, Midnight, you have to go, Ray shouted, voice hoarse. But Midnight didn't move. He let out another cry, raw, aching, like he knew if he left now, someone wouldn't make it out. Maddie rose, tears streaked with ash. She whispered, if you leave, he'll live. Midnight hesitated. Then, as if making the hardest decision of his life, he turned, galloped through the fire, and burst into the night. Ray and Maddie escaped through the side exit, just as the barn roof began to collapse behind them. Mustang Hollow was lit up like high noon. Harper, Colton, Mercedes, Dixie. Everyone was there. Fire trucks, ambulances, police. Sirens drowned out the crickets. Ray sat on the ground, trembling hands blackened with soot. Elijah rushed to him. Are you hurt? Ray didn't respond. His eyes stayed fixed on the barn, now a pile of glowing coals and twisted beams, the place where his peace had once lived. Colton turned to the sheriff. This wasn't an accident. We've got cameras around the barn. I want every second reviewed. By morning, everyone gathered in the main office. Maddie played the video feed from the grain shed camera. The screen flickered, then showed Jesse, hood up, jacket zipped, creeping toward the barn under the cover of night. Harper gasped. Dixie's voice cracked. He really did it. Colton stood motionless. Mercedes folded her hands in silent prayer. Ray turned away. Maddie spoke softly. He's family. What do you want to do? Ray stayed silent for a long while. Then he said, nothing. No lawsuits, no police, no court. The room exploded. Colton snapped. Are you out of your mind? He could have killed people that he burned down half the ranch. Ray replied evenly. If you drag him into court, this ranch will never heal. It'll be headlines, lawyers and cameras. Two brothers fighting in public, forever enemies. Warren never wanted that, neither do I. Harper's eyes welled. That night, Harper found Jesse. He was sitting in the half-burnt corner stall, where only a few charred beams still stood. His eyes were bloodshot. I ruined everything. There's nothing left to save. She sat beside him. There's still one thing, you. Jesse laughed bitterly. They'll never forgive me. Ray already has. The rest is up to you. He looked at her, voice cracking. Why didn't he fight back? Why didn't he throw me out? Harper's answer was soft, because to him this ranch isn't land or wood, it's soul. And you, Jesse, you're part of that soul. The next day, Jesse returned, quietly, without announcement. He began cleaning the wreckage, one plank at a time. Ray watched from a distance. When Jesse struggled to lift a fallen beam, Ray walked over silently and lifted the other end. Neither spoke. Not that day, not that week. But in their silence was forgiveness. In the weeks after the fire, Harper and Maddie started planning the rebuild. Harper proposed a hybrid model, open-air stalls and a therapy center for veterans using equine therapy. Colton offered no resistance. He even contacted architects from Santa Fe and pledged full legal support to transform the ranch into a protected Mustang sanctuary, per their father's dream. Jesse kept working. One morning, Ray called him over by the paddock. There's a mare due any day now. She needs someone watching her. Jesse hesitated. You trust me? Ray smiled. Trust? Not yet, but I've got hope. One early spring night, Maddie shook Ray awake. Midnight's in labor. They ran to the barn. Jesse was already there, cradling the foal's head as it slid into the world. Sweat on his brow, but eyes burning with joy. Harper held the flashlight. Colton and Mercedes arrived just in time. For the first time, the entire Callahan family stood together, around a new life. The foal was jet black, with a tiny white crescent on its forehead, like moonlight left behind after the fire. Ray knelt down, hand on its neck. Midnight's echo? That's it. The echo of an old soul, and a hope for what's still to come. The spring sky over Sierra Flats felt quieter than usual. After the fire, after the night Midnight's echo was born, Mustang Hollow seemed reborn, not just with fresh timber and shiny new fences, but with something far more fragile. Hope. A month after Midnight gave birth, Ray seemed lighter, more present. He no longer sat on the porch just to watch the sun rise. He worked again, slowly, steadily, like a man who had memorized the rhythm of this land. Maddie became his shadow. She held his hand through restless nights. She helped Harper with logistics. She proposed ideas for a therapy program using horses to treat veterans with trauma. Mercedes, quiet at first, returned to teaching riding lessons to kids with anxiety disorders. She led Midnight's Echo into the arena, showing children how to touch a horse's heart, without whips, without reins. Colton changed the most. Once a polished attorney, he now listened more. Not with his ears, but with his instincts. He stood beside Jesse in the barns, not as an older brother giving orders, but as a man learning how to speak a new language, horse. And Jesse, the boy who nearly destroyed the ranch, was now the first to rise and the last to leave. He cleaned stalls, swapped hay, and whispered to Midnight's Echo like the young colt understood every word. One afternoon, Harper received an envelope in the mail, plain brown, no return address. Inside was a DNA report from a lab in Albuquerque. It confirmed what only Warren had known. Midnight was not a typical Mustang. She carried a rare, purebred lineage, descendants of military horses once used in the Korean War, a bloodline nearly extinct. Harper gasped. At the bottom, someone had scribbled in ink, "Midnight wasn't just a legacy, she was what your father died protecting." She rushed to find Ray. He read the results, nodded slowly. "Your father knew long ago, but he never sold her, never auctioned, never told anyone. He believed Midnight carried something more valuable than money. The spirit of the Mustang, loyal, enduring, always returning home." Harper gripped his hand. "Then Midnight's Echo? He's the future. The echo of more than just a horse, the echo of a belief." Not long after, Maddie received a call from the mayor's office in Sierra Vista. They invited Ray, Harper, and the Mustang Hollow team to a public ceremony honoring guardians of the Western soul. Mustang Hollow was to be declared a cultural sanctuary for both wild horses and the human values they represented. The day of the event dawned crisp and clear. Ray wore a denim shirt and old boots. He stood on the stage beside Harper, Maddie, Colton, and Jesse. Below them, townspeople, veterans, children, tourists, all clapping softly as the mayor finished her speech. Suddenly, a small blonde girl stepped out from the crowd. She walked up to Midnight's Echo, who stood still beside the podium. No one stopped her. She raised a hand. The young colt stepped forward, lowered his head. She whispered, "You're the echo of something good." And the crowd fell silent. After the ceremony, Mercedes launched a new initiative, Whispering Herds, a 3-month program offering emotional recovery for orphans, trauma survivors, and veterans with PTSD. They would live on site, care for the horses, and learn the story of Warren Callahan, the man who believed war wounds could be healed not by weapons, but by the warmth of a loyal creature. Ray opposed it at first, not because he didn't believe, but because he sensed something was coming. One May afternoon, as the team rehearsed for the upcoming dedication event, Ray stumbled. He fell to the ground, clutching his chest. Jesse was the first to reach him. "Call 911, Maddie." Harper knelt beside him, tears already brimming. "No, not now, not today." Ray opened his eyes. He didn't speak. He just squeezed each of their hands, one by one. Then his eyes locked on Harper's, a soft smile, and then, gone. Ray Halter's funeral was unlike any Sierra Flats had ever seen. He was buried in the center of the ranch, surrounded by the horses he loved. Maddie laid his old leather bridle on the coffin. Mercedes placed a green scarf, Warren's favorite winter color. Colton read the eulogy. Jesse said nothing, but it was he who led the riderless horse tradition, an empty saddle, reins turned backward. Midnight walked behind him. And trailing them all, silent and still, Midnight's Echo. No one taught him, but when the hearse pulled away, the young colt climbed the hill overlooking the horizon. He stood alone, head bowed, no neigh, no hoofbeat, only wind and a soul, now part of this land forever. 6 months after Ray Halter's passing, Mustang Hollow wore a new face. Not glamorous, not unfamiliar, but exactly as Ray would have wanted it. The same soul with a sturdier shell. The old ranch sign had been replaced. Carved into raw oak, the new lettering read, "Mustang Hollow, Callahan and Halter Legacy." In the pale winter sunlight, those words glowed. Not just names, but a promise. A vow to preserve everything Warren and Ray had built, with blood, sweat, and silence. The 50th anniversary of Mustang Hollow arrived under clear skies. The largest crowd Sierra Flats had ever seen gathered for the celebration. Locals brought baked pies, harmonicas, leather coats, and faded photos. many showing Ray, knee-deep in mud, grinning beside a wild-eyed colt. Colton took the mic. Dressed in a navy blazer, standing tall on a makeshift stage, he addressed the crowd. Today isn't just about Mustang Hollow surviving 50 years. It's about honoring the two men who kept it alive. My father, Warren Callahan, and the man he chose to stand beside him, Raymond Halter. Thunderous applause erupted. Harper sat in the front row, eyes red, arm around Maddie, now officially Mustang Hollow's lead manager, a title agreed on by Colton, Jesse, and Harper alike. Mercedes stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. This is the Medal of Honor issued by the state of New Mexico, awarded posthumously to Ray Halter for a lifetime of uncredited service in preserving the Mustang breed and promoting human-animal healing. We receive it now to return it to where it belongs. She opened the box. A silver medal, engraved with the image of a wild horse rearing into the wind, rested on deep crimson velvet. Jesse took it with reverence, carried it to the cypress tree where Ray used to sit during sunsets. He dug a small hollow. Maddie handed him a stone with Ray's name etched into it. He placed it gently, no words spoken, and the whole ranch bowed their heads. That afternoon, Maddie led Midnight's Echo out of the stable. The young stallion had grown strong, his mane thick like Midnight's, but his eyes carried something else, Ray's stillness. "Come on, little one, let me show you where you'll run." She didn't use a lead. No saddle, no reins, only walked beside him. They crossed the northern pasture, where wild mustangs often gathered in the evening sun. On the hilltop, a storm-colored Mustang approached, a true wild horse, fierce and free. It halted before Midnight's Echo, lifted its head, and neighed sharply. Midnight's Echo took one step back, then 2 steps forward. They ran, together, into the herd, into the horizon. From a distance, Harper watched. She turned to Colton. "You see that? He doesn't belong in a barn, just like Dad and Raver belonged behind walls. They belonged out there, with the wind, free." Colton nodded. Jesse said nothing, only rested his hands on the fence, eyes fixed on the running silhouettes. That night, the family gathered around a bonfire in the center yard. Mercedes cooked Ray's favorite stew. Maddie read from his old journal. "A horse doesn't care who you are. It only needs to know you're honest, and if you're patient, if you're kind, it'll give you something we humans sometimes forget to offer: trust." Silence fell. Harper reached into her coat and unfolded a letter. "This is official, signed by Colton, Jesse, and me. Starting today, Mustang Hollow becomes a private sanctuary, a place for wild horses and for people needing healing. Veterans, children, anyone chasing something they lost." Maddie clutched Harper's hand. Mercedes wept, openly. Jesse said quietly, "Dad and Ray would be proud." Colton added, "You don't protect a legacy by locking it up. You protect it by passing it forward." The next morning, Maddie climbed the northern ridge. Midnight's Echo wasn't in his stall, but fresh hoofprints carved the damp soil. She followed them to the top of the hill, where the herd galloped through golden light. And at the center, a black colt, mane flying like wildfire, alive, unbroken, free. She didn't call out, only smiled. And somewhere in the wind she could almost hear Ray's voice. "Some dreams don't die, they just need someone to live them." Have you ever had a place, a creature, or a memory you'd hold on to no matter what? If yes, comment 1 below. And if you're still searching for it, comment 0 to let us know you're not alone on this journey. If you believe that stories between humans and animals can help heal even the deepest wounds, subscribe to True Animal Stories and come with us on the next journey of hope, healing, and heart.